Good evening. I'd like to again open the Harwich Board of Selectmen meeting for August 10th, 2020. I say again because we did open our meeting at 5:30 and then went into executive session in which we discussed the possible purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real estate. If chair declares an open meeting may have detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the public body. And secondly, pursuant to MGL 30A, paragraph 3, discuss collective bargaining with the Harwich Employee Association and the Highways Maintenance Employees Association. We then adjourned the executive session with the intent of going back into executive after our general session is over to keep on schedule. So with that, I would ask you to join me in a pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure if you mentioned, but if you would make reference to Selectman Howell.
I will do that. That was next on my...
Thank you, sorry.
Selectman Howell is home resting. He had a knee replacement 2 days ago now, I think. So he's been joining us off and on by remote call. But you might imagine he's under a little pain at the moment. But we'll be sure he keeps in touch. Thank you, Joe. Next on the agenda is a weekly briefing, and Joe, for the COVID-19, and I think Megan is on as well.
So actually, I'm very pleased to announce for several reasons that Megan Eldridge is enjoying an actual day off that includes an evening off. So we're joined this evening by our senior health agent. Did I get it right, Katie? Yep.
Yes, you did, yep.
And our senior health agent is going to do the update for COVID-19. So
Okay.
I'll turn it over to Katie Tenalia.
Welcome, Katie.
All right. Thank you for having me this evening. It sounds like there's feedback on my end. Are you guys getting kind of a repeat?
You're fine from our standpoint.
Okay. Yeah, we're so happy for Megan. She finally got to have her first day off, and I think it's 6 months at this point. So I hope she enjoyed her day off. Her report is provided in your packet. The total number of confirmed Harwich cases is 139. Included are 71 individuals from Wingate. Fatalities remain at 24, and we are currently following 7 active cases right now. Luckily, Harwich has seen a decrease in the rate of positive tests over the last week from 2.12% about a week ago to 0.66% this week, which is great news. To date, 2,881 people have been tested from Harwich. In cooperation with the Barnstable County Rapid Response Team, Barnstable County Department of Health Environment, many surrounding towns, we hosted a COVID test clinic for restaurant workers who may have been exposed to COVID-19 last Tuesday at the community center, and we do have those results in. The clinic showed that there was only 1 positive case. There was 151 negative cases, and 5 showed up as no result. So right now, the VNA thinks that that just means that the people didn't show up, and so it became a no result test, but we are waiting to have confirmation back for the VNA that that actually is correct. If anyone is looking to get tested, they can contact their primary care doctor or use the testing center located tool, which is on mass.gov, and we recently updated our website to have that link as well. The travel order that went into effect on August 1st now includes the state of Rhode Island. So anyone traveling to and from Rhode Island must either quarantine for 14 days when they return or have a negative PCR test result. So that was Megan's update, and what wasn't included in that, I'll go over briefly. Governor Baker made an announcement on Friday, and effective tomorrow, Tuesday, August 11th, the executive order on gatherings has been reduced from 100 people to 50 people. The inside gathering limit remains the same at 25. And this will now apply to both public and private spaces. Face coverings will be required where more than 10 people from different households will be mixing. Public safety officials, including state and local law enforcement, have jurisdiction to enforce these orders, and events host in violation of these orders will be subject to fines or cease and desist orders. At this time, step 2 of phase 3 is indefinitely postponed, so we're still in phase 3, step 1. The restaurant protocols will also require that alcohol can only be ordered at a restaurant if it accompanies food that is prepared on site. So chips no longer count. The administration also announced that free Stop the Spread COVID-19 testing in 17 communities is being extended through September 12th. And they added another test site in Framingham, and that's open to anyone. You don't have to be a resident in those areas. And last but not least, the state is creating an interagency COVID-19 enforcement intervention team to provide interventions in areas deemed as high risk, and they'll scale up statewide enforcement. So that is the lengthy report, if anyone has any questions.
Just a general question. What's your sense of how we're doing in Harwich in the mandated mask view? I know I go through Red River Beach, and it looks like people are, by and large, being pretty careful about distancing and stuff. Is your sense positive about how we're doing?
Certainly. And the data shows, I mean, we're down 0.66% for a positive test rate, which is certainly in the right direction. I mean, last week we were at 2.12. So there's certainly a big improvement in that, which is great to see.
Okay. Thank you. Questions, comments for Katie? Ed?
A couple of things. In the section of the report which talks about the Barnstable County setting up a testing site and testing restaurant workers who may have been exposed to COVID-19 on Tuesday, August 4th at the community center. Now, the way that reads, you can either take it that the restaurant workers were exposed at the community center on Tuesday the 4th, or that's when the testing site was.
I apologize for the confusion. That was the date the test site occurred. That was the date the testing occurred.
Okay. And the other issue, I was talking to a couple of folks that operate a restaurant here in town, and they're still somewhat confused about what the governor's new pronouncements or guidelines or whatever they are on serving alcohol and food. They understand that the food has to be prepared on site, but does every table have to be ordering something to eat before they can be served alcoholic beverages? That was their uncertainty. Yeah. And I think
we're happy to. Sorry.
Go ahead.
We're happy to work with any restaurants that have questions. You do have to order food in order to order alcohol. And this week we'll hopefully be able to reach out to all the restaurants and make sure that everyone understands the new regulations.
Okay, yeah.
If I can pick up on that as well, and thank you, Katie. Megan and I did talk about that last week, and it's not so much new as it's a key directive and emphasis by the administration. So what the governor said last week is they're going to actively enforce restaurants that aren't serving food, because a restaurant that does not serve food is considered by the administration to be a bar, and bars are still prohibited during COVID-19. So what we're working on, and Megan and I talked about it, we were hoping to have more discussion by tomorrow from DPH and other places. I know Megan has a call for DPH tomorrow. I have a call with the administration where they're reaching out, DPH is reaching out to boards of health, and health directors, and administration's reaching out to managers and administrators. And we had those questions because what it would mean for us is if a restaurant closes their kitchen At that point, they should be closing their operation based on how this is reading. So we're looking to get more clarification on that.
Okay. Yeah, I think that would be helpful for the
It would,
restaurant
because I've heard some
operators.
confusion too.
Yeah.
And then the other question that has come up in conversation, a number of people have gone into restaurants and noticed that folks working in the kitchen, not all of them are wearing masks. And there's some indication from a couple of folks that they've been informed that the kitchen, folks working in the kitchen don't need to wear masks.
No, everyone has to wear a mask unless they have a medical exemption.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Michael?
Joe, just a
You're
quick
welcome.
follow-up on your comment on the potato chip thing and not serving food. If a restaurant that closes their kitchen brings in a bunch of pizzas to serve to people, and I only ask because I know some restaurants are doing that, is that okay?
No, the food has to be cooked on premises. There's
Okay.
no takeout, carry-in, or anything like that.
Thank you.
Anything else for Katie? Thanks again.
Thanks,
And,
Katie.
Thanks, Katie. Nice work.
Thank you. Thank you.
Cindy, you want to comment on the view from the business community?
Actually, I was just going to kind of second what Katie was updating everyone on, because that all came out on Friday, and I immediately sent an email to our restaurants that did get the update, so they do know what the governor did mention in that. So they're aware of it, but again, as Joe and Katie did mention, there's more to come tomorrow. So they're all up to date there, but there are questions, like there have been as we go along this. Every day is something new. Basically, everything's the same as I mentioned last week. Everyone's going ahead with the travel order. Some of the hotels and short-term rentals felt some cancellations, but they're recouping those as well. So most of the visitors that I saw all this weekend with their beach stickers were from Massachusetts. So I think that's going to be our big push going forward. Not too many from out of state. So we're just, everyone's holding their own, continuing and looking forward to hopefully a safe and responsible fall. But that's it for tonight.
Thank you, Cindy. Any other comments, questions? Thanks again. Next on the agenda is public comment. I just have one short one, and that is each summer we have a meeting for non-residents to let them catch up on activities in town. And we'll do that next week. Jamie and others in the department heads are putting together a video that has spent a lot of time and effort. And so I tend to put that on there, working with Joel and Jamie, put that on the agenda for next week. I do want to show, I think, Jamie, it's about 40 minutes. An hour and 20 minutes. That's somewhat time, but I think it's important that we do it during our meetings so people are more likely to pay attention to it. Afterwards, they can tune in and view it at their leisure. But I want to also give recognition to the people in our departments that have done that, and I think we owe that as well. So that will be next week. Okay? Anyone else?
Yeah. Over the weekend, and well, actually over the last several weeks, there's been a growing a number of folks in the middle of the night pulling up, taking, destroying political signs around town that people have put out for one candidate or another, or not even for a candidate, but to speak to a specific point of view. And I think it's really sad that we can't, we've gotten to a point where some people don't feel that folks have the right to state their position on their front lawn. And I know I'm one of the houses that had that happen, and I filed a police report, and I'm urging, if anybody else has had that happen, in their expressions of their First Amendment rights, that they also file a police report.
Yep. I appreciate that. And to some extent, that seems to be nonpartisan. We get both sides doing it, which is very unfortunate. Anything else? I'll move then next to the consent agenda.
Chairman, if I may.
Joe?
Normally, this is where Scott may identify if anyone has reached out. Could we just ask of Jamie if she's aware of any emails? Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Next in is consent agenda.
I move that we approve the consent agenda as follows. A, minutes for approval, June 1st, 2020, and June 5th, 2020. And B, vote to approve 2020 annual committee reappointments. And it says as listed in the packet, but it's the Board of Health, Matt Antoni, term to expire 6/30/23, and Agricultural Commission, Brent Hemian, alternate, term to expire 6/30/23.
Excellent. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Not all, I said all in favor. I'll take a roll call vote on this. For those watching, I'm reminded that since, even though we're here together, you all are not, and we should do a roll call so it's clear what our votes are. So I shall do that. Steve?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
I'm an aye. Ed?
Aye.
And Don is escaped for a few minutes. Come back to him. So motion's passed 4-0 at this time, Joe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's a document going around to have all of you sign for that.
Okay. New business, then, Joe, I'll turn this over to you.
Sure. So would you, get everything all up to date here. So you can see the draft letter that's in the packet that relates to a aquaculture permit that would be coming before the board after this action. So I spoke with Dr. Dan Ward on behalf of the Nantucket Bay Scallop Company, and they have a pending Class 3 aquaculture license that will be coming before the board, and he also indicated that he and his business partners are very excited about the opportunity to present what they're looking to do. However, before you could entertain that and before they can proceed, the board would have to authorize you, Mr. Chairman, to send in a letter to the copy you see in the packet. So it's a bit of a convoluted process. It's through Division of Marine Fisheries and all that. So the board would be being asked to vote to allow you to send that letter, which allows the proposed applicants to then seek a biological survey of the area that they're looking to do the shell fishing from. They can't proceed until that biological survey is done, but only the board can request it.
Thanks for that explanation. Michael?
I move that we approve the request, or to request a biological survey at 99 Riverside Drive on Herring River related to a pending request for a Class 3 marine aquaculture permit for Nantucket Sound Bay Scallop Company LLC, and authorize the chair to sign.
Second.
Second. Any further discussion? If not, again, I'll take a roll call. Ed?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. So, Joe, thank you for that explanation.
Thank you,
We
Mr.
can
Chairman. I'll
move
send
ahead.
that letter down for your signature.
Next on the agenda is committee liaison assignments. You have a list on that, and in past years, we've, if my memory is right, this has been pretty informal. I've just kept the assignments the same as were last year, but I would ask that if any of you want to trade or take another assignment, let me know, and we'll make adjustments as we go forward. So, Michael?
I move that we approve the Board of Selectmen Committee Liaison list as presented.
Second.
And I appreciate that. In the past, even after this has been done, we've had, I know, a couple times where people wanted to trade. And I think we're okay with that. Just let us know so we get it. And Joel, if you could just be sure that those liaison assignments are correct in our, on the website.
Will do.
Okay? Motion's been made and seconded, and I'll go roll call. I'll start. Aye. Michael?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Ed?
Aye.
Okay. And I see old business, Charlene, thanks for attending. I You're up next, it sounds like. And Joe, do you want to start this? You want to?
Just that our town planner is present because she has the, as you can see from her documentation in the packet, there's a proposed zoning bylaw amendment that deals with the definition and process of multifamily. So Charlene's here to answer any questions, but the simple action tonight is for the board to remand this back to the planning board as is required by the Attorney General's approval process. But our planner stands ready to answer questions, I'm sure.
Charlene, you want to maybe just provide a little more detail to that, and then we can move on?
Me?
Yes.
Wanted to hear from you, Larry?
Yes, can you hear me okay? Your picture is frozen on us, so I can't.
Oh, sorry, can you hear me now?
I can. You want to just,
Okay, so this is actually something that, gosh, probably a year or more ago, the planning board and the selectmen met jointly, and this was one of the items that was requested that we look at. And you may remember, you may not, the existing bylaws relative to multifamily are extremely arduous, just really difficult, and quite frankly, impossible to meet. So what we tried to do is work on a bylaw that was, it's still a special permit process, but has kind of streamlined the process, made it a lot less arduous, and it's more parcel-based in that you can, you fit it to the parcel rather than trying to fit the use, rather than trying to go the other way around. So this bylaw, I hope, takes into account, you know, all the different changes that were proposed. Also, multifamily was all over the place in the zoning bylaw. We've tried to streamline that so it occurs in only one location now, other than the use table and the area regulation and the bulk regulation table. So this hopes to streamline it, and I hope you will send it along to the planning board so they can hold their their public hearing.
just emphasize that, and agree with Charlene, we have discussed this as a board in the past, and our recommendation, our support was to just do what the planning board is recommending, to try to streamline this. One time we were following the Barnstable County, I think they gave a recommendation. We didn't quite go that far, but we want to make it as easy as possible. So appreciate that. Michael?
And just to be clear, tonight's ask is to send it to the
back.
planning board for a public hearing. It is not, we're not right now supporting this. We are
Correct.
just sending
Right.
it back.
The motion
We're
is
supporting the letter.
Correct.
Go ahead.
I was gonna make a motion. Do you want me
Right. Yeah.
No, I was going to ask a few
Go ahead.
questions. Charlene, on
Yes.
the table, I'm not sure what table it is, what the heading is, but it talks about permitted heights and stories and lot coverage, et cetera. In the last column, minimum residential floor area in square feet, and in District MRL and MRL1, there are no requirements, but in all other districts, there are specific square footage requirements. What makes...
Right.
What's...
Sorry. So in the MRL and MRL1 zoning districts, multifamily is allowable, but it's lumped all together in the MRL1 and MRL zoning districts. There are other uses that are allowable in that district, but there was no, there were no minimum requirements except for the multifamily. So we made sure that now in the MRL and the MRL1 zoning districts, where single family and two family are allowable, we have those other criteria in there. Before, they weren't there. So if somebody was going to be building a single family dwelling, they could build up to 40 feet, and actually it's 50 feet. So we're adding information that was missing from the bylaw. So in the MRL and MRL1 zoning districts, the one family, two family now have something to go by, whereas before they did not.
Okay, in the last column, though, where it talks about minimum residential net floor area, in all districts where multifamily is permitted by a use special permit, there are specific square footage that are required of the different size multifamily units, whereas in the MRL1 and MRL1, there are no requirements. And I'm wondering, presumably somebody could then build a
No, they're not, because those are for all other, those are for all other permitted uses in those districts. You cannot regulate the floor area of a one or two family dwelling under Massachusetts general law.
Okay, so
if you look at any other, if you look at the rest of that table, the bulk table, and you look to see what the minimum residential floor area is, they're blank. All the other ones are blank. So in the RR zoning district, it's blank. In the CH1 zoning district, it's blank. So there are blanks when it comes to other floor area requirements. In all districts where multifamily is permitted by the use special permit, you need to go back to the previous page, and it would be allowable by special permit in the RR, RL, RM, RH1. It already is RH1, RH2, RH3, CV, CH1, and the MRL and the MRL1. So we're adding the use to other districts. So in all districts where it is permitted by a special permit, these are the criteria, including that a studio or efficiency no less than 250, a one bedroom is 550, and a two bedroom is 940.
Does that answer your question, Ed?
no, it still doesn't, but I'm gathering I'm going to have to take a look at the rest of the...
In your packet, if I might, in your packet, you were provided two documents. One was the actual zoning amendment, and the other was showing you what the changes within the zoning bylaw were. If you refer to that document, you'll see the actual changes that are being proposed.
The second document isn't in our packet.
If you got it, I didn't look to see if it was in your packet. It was sent down, but there other uses are permitted in the MRL and MRL1 zoning districts, including one and two family dwellings. Under the existing bylaw, it lumps all of those into the provision for, it's hard to explain it without looking at it visually.
Yeah,
but in the
that's what I've
MRL and the
concluded.
MRL1 zoning districts, this covers all other permitted uses either by right or by special permit. For the purposes of if you're doing a multifamily in the MRL or MRL1 zoning districts, you drop down to in districts where multifamily is permitted by special permit. Those are the criteria if you're doing a multifamily for all districts where it's allowed by special permit.
Okay, I'll have to review the rest of the documentation, because I only got one of the documents you're referring to.
Okay.
Okay, I'll be sure to make sure you get the second one.
Okay, thank you, Charlene. Joe?
Well, I had one question, but another one based on that, Charlene. Is the absence of that document going to be fatal or a problem for the Attorney General?
No, not at all. It was more for reference purposes, has absolutely nothing to do with the zoning article
Great,
as
thank you.
presented.
And my only question then is in the suggested, sorry.
Yeah, Joy, it was pretty extraordinary seeing the president was in the middle of his coronavirus briefing, and mid-sentence when a Secret Service agent stepped onto that rostrum there and told him we need to go, we need to get out of that briefing room. They brought him to the Oval Office. Apparently what happened, according to the president's telling, is that somebody, a suspect, tried to enter the White House.
I'm sorry, who's speaking at the moment?
I just, I got
Muting?
him.
Okay.
Anyway, Charlene, in the article header, it talks about deleted text is shown with strike-through. And I know there's reference to deletions within that, but there were no strike-throughs. Is that is that necessary to have the strike-through? Is it going to be added, or can that language be taken out of the header of the article?
Oh, actually, we can take that out of the header. When we originally did this document, there were strike-throughs,
Yep.
but we cleaned it up tremendously. This used to be a lot longer, and we went through and culled it and edited it. And yeah, so that will come out, Joe. Thanks for catching that.
So I believe the deletions that she's mentioned are covered without that. Striking that will help us.
Okay.
And that's all I
Yes.
had. Thanks, Charlene.
Any other questions?
No, Charlene, I'm gonna make an appointment to see it, because I have some questions on the heights, but I will make an appointment. So with that,
Certainly. One thing I do want to point out, right now, there's a conflict between the table that we were just discussing and a section 325 dash, I believe it's 20, where in the table itself, it has one height limitation, and in section 325.20, it has a 50-foot permitted height. So the written text always takes precedent. So right now, multifamily is allowed to be 50 feet in height. So this will clean that up and straighten that out.
Okay.
okay, so I move that we vote to refer the zoning amendment relative to multifamily to the planning board for required public hearing.
I'll second the motion.
Okay.
And I just have one last little question, and there's a statement, and I'm not sure if it's in quotes and underlined because it's being added or it's deleted.
Where are you, Ed?
It says, "No outside staircase shall be used to furnish primary access to any of the units in a hotel or motel."
That's new language being added, Ed. Yep.
Okay, is there a reason why?
This actually exists in another section. We cleaned up the language and moved it.
Okay,
And I'll make sure you get that other document.
okay.
So there's re-lettering going on, is that what you're saying?
Yes, there is.
Yep.
Okay, but we have a motion and a second and to send this back to the planning board for a public hearing. And Charlene, in terms of timing, you expect to have the public hearing and results, so this will be on our town warrant?
That's the goal. At this point, we're looking at either September 10th or September 22nd for the public hearing. I'm a little hesitant about doing it on the 10th as we have a major application coming before the board. And I want to be sure that this gets the proper discussion and vetting that I think it deserves. So it definitely would be before the town meeting. You've got the document all except for the word strike through at the top. So this would be ready to go to the town meeting in its present form.
Okay. Thank you, Charlene.
Any changes would have to be made on the floor of town meeting if there were to be any.
All right. Thank you, Charlene. We have a motion and a second. So I'll take a roll call vote. Michael?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Ed?
Aye.
And I'm an aye, so it's 4-0. Thank you again, Charlene.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Next on old business is going back to the town meeting. Who wants to start this? I know, Steve, you've been involved in some of
Well,
this
you know,
stuff.
I'll speak to a number of these. The appropriation from stabilization fund, I think there's a general consensus that we do want to reserve a spot on the warrant. However, most people that I've spoken with are of the mind at this moment not to put a definitive number in that.
Yeah.
So that's where we are on that. The capital outlay plan is still debate and I think some degree of confusion around that as to whether we have to do a 7-year plan or a 5-year plan or whether we can do a 1-year plan. Don said, well, you know, whatever at this point. If there's a great feeling of a need for a 7-year plan, I guess we do it. The problem with that is that, you know, we have such unpredictability in our finances going forward that is it really a plan that you can fulfill? And so and we haven't really gotten an answer, or at least I haven't gotten an answer back as to whether we are required under the charter to do a 7-year plan, or whether we're allowed to, you know, do a 1-year plan and then move on from that. So
How do we resolve that? Joe, are you asking for legal help, or is that the consensus?
That would be
what's
my
happening,
preference, is
or-
to just seek legal opinion, given the unanticipated difference between the action of it by the voters and the implementation of it for the town.
May not be the final say, but at
Ed-
least it'll give us some
Ed had a-
options. Ed?
Yeah, you know, I think I stated last week that, you know, we have a capital outlay plan that has been vetted. Whether it holds up next year after our finances go through whatever they're going to go through is something we can deal with.
that would still be subject to a 2/3 vote, though? Is that,
To change.
If we
The
change it,
change.
it is.
yeah, okay,
You know, but,
okay.
you know,
Michael?
I
I
was just
don't,
gonna say what Ed said. I think that and we did ask that, I believe Rich Larios is still
You should
list
still
of chair. Has Rich been contacted?
Yeah,
'Cause-
if I may, the chairman and I spoke several times over the last several weeks. As you may know, Capital Outlay Committee prior to me was not in agreement with the language, did not support the questions and all that, and really aren't focused on the implementation of it. I think that rightfully falls to the administrator and the role for community outlay. What the chairman and I did talk about is try to plan for Capital Outlay Committee meetings, and he polled his group, and their feeling was that unless the plan was to be expanded, and they would weigh in, but if the plan is to be reduced, which is what I'm working on, they have no objection to that going forward, reduced without them meeting.
So if I'm hearing everyone right, let's keep it simple. Move ahead with what we have now. Michael?
I would agree with that. I think a lot of work went into where we are,
Yeah.
and projects got in queue, and it would be a shame to start from zero to try and get those figured into the next 7 years.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
I
we
would
can-
add a 7th year and send it to town meeting, and 2/3 vote, if it makes sense, is not hard to come by. And if we lose our finances and we can't do a project, I don't think 2/3 of town meeting's gonna say do it
Right.
anyway.
Right, I would agree with you.
So-
So Steve, does that help
I'll
on your
take, yes, that helps a
subcommittee?
great deal.
All
I'll
right,
take
Ed?
that back.
and in all the years when the requirement of getting a 2/3 vote was in place, and when we did some shuffling around, never once did the 2/3 vote get voted down, you know, so.
Right.
If the outlay committee needs to change something and they have a substantial reason for it, the town meeting goes for it. It's requiring the 2/3. It just prevents a group from coming in from sort of left field and rushing a petition article through.
Understood.
Yeah.
Understood, yeah. I'll take that back. The draft warrant we addressed the last time Joe was working. I don't know whether Joe wants to make a comment
I
on
do have
that?
updates on that
Okay.
specifically, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. First of all, hopefully you all got it in the packet last week. And I say hopefully because I'm now on to version 3. Today, obviously, I'm actively getting in there and working around things, also working off of the Finance Committee actions that they took last Thursday evening. You can find that on the back page of that packet material. And specifically, the stabilization article, that's can be found, it's on numbered now as Article 4 on page 8. The zoning bylaw that you just talked about begins on page 33 as a placeholder, that'll be reinserted. And today we got updates that, late in the day updates that will factor into Carol's update on the budget next week, but I'm trying to incorporate that, and we'll continue to send the draft warrant to you at every meeting with more and more refinement as we go. At this point, you can see that we're still hovering around the 44 number for articles, And Mr. Chairman, as you know, I can report out from our off-site visit last Tuesday,
Please.
if you'd like, but that will impact on the next agenda item, which would be the date, time, and location of the
Yeah,
town
would
meeting.
would you report that?
Sure. So tying in with that, Chairman Ballantyne, Moderator Michael Ford, Dana DeCosta as Finance Committee Chair, John Giorgio as Counsel, Anita Doucette as Town Clerk, myself and Jamie met with Cliff Steinruck from the Monomoy Custodial Department, and we did a walkthrough of the stadium. And we came away from that, I think, with everybody in agreement that it's workable, that we can certainly do that for that date and time, which is Saturday, September 26th at 10 a.m. And I've already started reaching out to staff, and we're working on all the logistics related to that. That, of course, is on the assumption that the board is willing to go forward with that date and time. The moderator had indicated that he's fine with that date. He's also fine with the rain date of Sunday, the 27th at 1 p.m. I believe that's what one of the communities where he's town council had done, a Saturday and a Sunday, so it fits. And we've got a number of towns that we can rely upon that have done outdoor town meeting as well as outdoor town meeting on football fields. So
Can I,
we can get it done. It's just going to be a big logistic push at this point, but we're prepared.
two
Steve?
things on that. It doesn't appear to me, under the governor's new order, that we'd be affected on our ability to have the outdoor meeting, correct?
Correct.
So that's only relative to indoor.
Well, actually, town meeting is exempt from those orders, so
Okay.
as you may know, town meeting is exempt from the open meeting law, but town meeting remains exempt from the directives with a heavy reliance on outdoor.
Okay.
So it is the,
And-
as I think I presented a few weeks ago, it is the course of action recommended by Department of Public Health to get it done safely. So if there are any changes to capacity and space, we don't expect that to be an issue for the town meeting.
Okay.
We're already building it on effective social distancing, 6 feet. And so what we're looking to do, as other towns have done, as you could see, I think the schools call it a cohort. That's a fancy way of saying a group. So there'd be a group of 2 seats, 6 feet, and then a single chair, and so on and so forth. And that allows for households, no more than 2, unfortunately. But and I think the moderator had requested that we account for 500 seats, which is more than adequate at that location. And then lastly, I asked Megan, based on the moderator's discussion with council, the board the Board of Selectmen or the moderator could not compel anyone to wear a mask, but the Board of Health order could. So Megan is going to present that to the Board of Health for them to consider a mask requirement order relative to the town meeting. And so that once you come into the gate to the stadium area, at that point you have to have a mask on. We have arrangements for folks that don't do it, but it is something that the Board of Health can mandate, and it's something that everybody last week felt was absolutely necessary to ensure that we're doing this as safely as possible.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of just, I agree with that. I think we should. But secondly, where's the DPW on this? Are they part of that, the process?
So, yeah, so Dana had a dual role, if you will. He was there as Finance Committee Chairman, but he did report back to Link and was going to talk to Boo. I've since connected with Link. The town engineer's got a schematic for the stadium, so he's going to be working on the layout plan.
Because I imagine they'll play a significant,
Oh, absolutely. Well, I told all department heads last week that everybody is,
Yeah.
just because of the logistics. It's going to be an all hands on deck, but DPW is definitely tied in. I think they've already made contact with Monomoy Facilities.
okay.
And we've also talked about that the moderator, the clerk, and I think it would be the board and others. It's not a direct easterly face. We figured it out with the sun, so you won't be looking straight into the sun, but the residents will be looking with the sun at their back, looking at a tent with a riser for the moderator, the clerk, and some others, and then having stations for microphones, and Deputy Chief Considine's already reaching out to the CERT team. They did that role in Chatham, and what they did is when they were fully masked and had everything they needed, when somebody spoke, they handed them a handheld microphone, they sanitized it and handed it on to the next person.
Good.
So very well organized and very mindful of all the restrictions that we have to honor.
A lot of logistics. Michael, do you have any comment, question?
On the draft warrant, are we gonna set aside some time to just start voting these articles soon?
Yeah, we should.
We have to, we're running out of time.
And Joe, for now, we're comfortable that the numbers match the article descriptions and,
Well, they did as of August 7th. The whole thing changed today, but that's what you'll get next week.
Okay.
Combing through it to make sure I'm accounting for the funding sources, the dollar amounts, and everything else. And to the earlier question, what I can start doing is segregating articles next week that you could vote on if you're ready, based
Oh,
on
we are.
actions
Yeah, we
by the
are.
Finance Committee.
We need to do that.
Yep,
yes.
Absolutely.
absolutely.
Good point.
can we get that hard copy when we vote on that to make notes on it?
Yeah.
Please,
You,
The
so you
hard
want a
copy of
here?
the,
Yeah.
next week when we
Yep,
vote.
absolutely.
so we can write it. Joe, going back to the town meeting, you want to speak to the quorum discussion?
Thank you, that was my other question.
So if I remember correctly, council had asked of you and the moderator, because that's what it would take, if the board were considering the quorum reduction, which is still an option, if you were to do that, you'd have to have the agreement of the moderator to do so. I know the moderator and I had a brief conversation about a consent calendar, which he's very familiar with and is aware of in other towns. That would allow us to commingle the less volatile items, just like you do on your consent agenda, to try and group those so we can get through that, because I know the moderator has expressed a desire to be there for no more than 2 hours to get everything done. So we've got the consent calendar that concept that we're working on, as well as if the board wanted to consider a reduction in quorum. If you do the reduction in quorum, though, it limits you as to what types of articles you could actually present to town meeting. And so it would reduce, I think, greatly the 44 articles that we're at, because there are some that, because you're reducing the quorum, I think the wisdom of the law was that you don't want to disenfranchise voters who are, because you could have less people start the meeting and participate in the meeting, that you could do things untoward, if you will, and ram things through, so-called. So I know that if the board is going to consider that, you would have to take an action to do that and then have a conversation with the moderator if he agreed with that concept.
And
And then you can reduce it anywhere from 149, one less than quorum, down to 15, which is 10%.
10%.
Right.
And what's the drop dead date? When do we, our last time we can make a decision
Well,
on that?
I think that has to be incorporated, obviously, into the warrant itself, but you have to give ample notice, so it would have to be done before the end of August, for certain. So if you want to vet this again, because I know we talked about it when we were in the surge and everything was remote and I was still in the bunker, we can bring that back up if you want for next week to really get into that discussion again.
Okay, good. Michael?
My only thought is it would be a shame to plan all this setup for this and not get a quorum.
Yeah.
You know, I think there's still a lot of people that are extremely nervous about coming out.
And it doesn't limit who can
Right.
come.
Right.
So if 400 people want to show up, 400 people can show up.
Right, yeah.
I mean, so you're not preventing anyone. All you're doing is enabling us to be able to complete what we need to do. And we certainly need to do this.
Yeah, I think for me, it means that we want to be sure that we limit our articles to, let me say it differently. I'd hate to have any article on there that's going to be, we expect to have wide discussion with less than a quorum. And that's going to be a judgment call when we go through the warrant, I think, but it's,
Well, why don't we consider it? So,
I've already started my calculators for how much time between now and the annual, but also now and the next annual.
how,
And it's just over 200 days to the next, so
yeah, we're moving, yeah.
going to be one on top of the other.
What's the, let me ask your feedback on the, Joel's idea of doing a consent agenda. Is that something we can, people feel comfortable with doing, moving ahead, at least proposing that?
Say that again?
I wanted to know what you're feeling on trying to group things in a consent agenda.
I love it.
Yeah, I don't see why we wouldn't do it.
So the only question on that was raised by council, just to do a review of the charter. I believe the moderator stated that there is no, it's not referenced in the charter.
Right.
And I would want to understand if that means if there's no reference to it, do we have the right to do it, or does it have to be expressly stated? So there is that one item I can follow up with John.
Follow up, because
Yep.
because it makes sense to me.
But it's
There's
a useful
'cause
tool.
We always have a number of warrant articles we know
Yep.
it's going to be straightforward.
Yep. And as it gets to quorum, I was speaking to my counterpart in Chatham, and she had mentioned that their quorum was 100 when they did their meeting on Veterans Field, and they had over 200 show up,
Yeah,
so.
they did.
Okay.
And as we get into the planning, I'll be sharing with the board to get out to the general public what we're looking at, to show the schematic on the field, to give people comfort that we really have a streamlined way to get in, and then once you're there, you're outdoors, you can still wear your mask when you're not speaking, you have protections from the concerns of the virus. So as we get through that, we'll share that to give people comfort that they know they can show up and be safe.
Okay. So we'll bring that back next week, and we'll start building on,
So if you'd like, what I can do is put in it as an agenda item, specifically discussion on reduced quorum, to at least give you that opportunity to have that discussion.
Right.
I'll reach out to the moderator
And
to
then
see if he's
we'll-
available to participate. I'll be working on the separated articles so that you can take actual votes on those.
okay,
And we'll continue to update the warrant as new numbers come in,
okay, good,
and so on and so forth.
perfect. Anything else on these, Ed?
On the warrant?
Yeah,
Yeah, I have a question. It's on page 6. And it's a sheet that has municipal finance terms related to Proposition 2.5 terms. And in a number of cases, debt exclusion, general override, capital outlay, expenditure exclusion, which all are overrides. The procedure it talks about is that those questions can be put on the ballot by a 2/3 vote of the Board of Selectmen. And I've always believed or thought that it requires a 2/3 vote of the town meeting, as the town meeting is the appropriating body. And then it actually only takes a majority of town meeting, and then a 2/3 vote at the ballot.
Joel's, what-
Are you talking about debt exclusion?
Debt exclusion or general override?
Yeah, so, well, first let me say that those pages, I will admit up front, are pretty much white noise for me. I didn't really get into pages 4,
Yeah.
5, and 6 because they've
Yeah.
carried over.
Yeah,
But my understanding of the debt exclusion is, it is a requirement that, so the election warrant is the board's warrant, and the board would add the debt exclusion. For the board to add the debt exclusion is in fact a 2/3 vote. The appropriation article at town meeting only requires a straight majority,
yeah,
and the result at the ballot box requires a straight majority.
yeah. Okay. So, so what it's saying here in this definition is that we can put it on the ballot, whether or not it has any validity or not is still dependent on whether it has received a majority vote of town meeting.
Or vice versa, right? The board could put a debt exclusion on a ballot. You would want to have a town meeting article for appropriation. So you'd have to be mindful of that period to tie the two together. So if we were going to do, and it's not presently recommended for anything we're doing right now, given the time frame. In other words, we do not have a special election scheduled for debt exclusions. You do want to have that concurrent calendar, because you could have the selectmen put a ballot question on for 2/3. It could go to the ballot box, it could be approved, but if you don't have the appropriation approved by town meeting, it's null.
Yeah,
But the timing of which comes first, it's a chicken and egg. You can, I've been in communities where they've done town meeting first in anticipation and then schedule the election and vice versa. But I believe the net effect of the definition is accurate. There's some things missing in it.
yeah.
But to that end, I did toy with the idea of, not that I've got all the time in the world, but trying to validate these 3 pages, because like I said, for me, they
Yeah.
were more white noise that I just went right into the heart of the matter, so.
Yeah,
But
because
I can go back and give those a look over.
the item for general override, it says if the ballot question is approved by a majority of the voters, the town levy limit is permanently increased. But that's only the case if it has also received a majority approval at town meeting.
Right, to appropriate the funds that were.
And I think,
Yep,
you know, reading through some of that, there are just some things missing that ought to be,
yeah.
to fully lay out the procedure so people are being
There is
given the
a-
whole story.
Yeah.
The Division of Local Services updated their municipal finance term document. It's about a 20-page document. They had updated it for the first time in years. It was updated as of January 2020. So I can either cull from that, or I can put a reference in there to direct people to it, whichever you'd like. But they have updated their own glossary. So if this was derived from a previous version, that version's changed.
Yeah.
It makes sense to me if we're gonna do it to change that, so they don't
Yeah,
have to send it to
yeah.
another party, but, okay. Thank you, Ed. And Joe, anything else on that? So we have our work cut out for us next week then. We'll start these warrant discussions. Michael?
Just as a matter of schedule, you talked about the non-resident taxpayers meeting and the hour and 20-minute long video.
Which?
Is it gonna be a call-in or a questions and answer to the
No.
board? And how much time, other than the hour and 20 minutes, are we gonna spend? And then can you limit the agenda so that we can work our way through this warrant next week, or call a special meeting?
Thinking as we're having this discussion, I would, we're putting it on, the first part of that is we're putting it on video so they can look at it at their leisure, not have a call-in. So I think we'll have time for that. I think our agenda will be relatively short, will be that, and then get back to the warrant article and the quorum. Otherwise, we'll never get over. Did that answer? I think we'll try to keep that controlled, Michael.
Thank you.
Next on to Town Administrator's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just two quick updates, but one I thought was very enlightening, and it was a great process to go through. But I'm informing you through the TA report of the appointment of a social services coordinator, as we had talked about before, and the person should be familiar to everybody. It's Julie Wheatus, who is our program specialist in the COA. Diamond in the rough and a fantastic promotion, in my opinion. She's been with us, I'm going to say probably just close to a year, but she has a phenomenal academic background in gerontology and social services and all of that. So I asked her why she took the program specialist. She said she wanted to get her foot in the door. And I said, I imagine you wanted to get your foot in the door for things like this to happen. So I think it's a great story. It's a great promotion. Emily is absolutely ecstatic with that, and it was her recommendation, and I endorse it. And so just letting you know that we've got that, which is a great story on many levels,
Okay,
in
great.
my opinion. It's always great to be able to promote someone in that situation. The second one is an update that I got just before the meeting tonight through council. You may have remembered the rigmarole is the only word I can think of right now related to the CVAC and the Monomoy School solar array.
Yeah.
So I worked with council. Council vetted everything, and we got it back to all the principal parties before the end of July, and they reached out today to have a meeting to talk about it. So what's not lost on me is that statement that the funding was going to be in jeopardy by the end of the month. They're now stating that it was a misstatement, and the funding will needs to be finalized by the end of this month. So there may be an opportunity for a document to come back to the board, but council and I are waiting to hear what their concerns were with the town's red line version. Because again, it was written with a mindset of getting them through the process quickly, so. Unfortunately, more on that later.
Okay.
And that concludes my.
But the action is in their court at the moment.
Absolutely, yep.
Okay. Thank you, Joe. Selectmen's reports, Ed?
Well, I guess it's not so much a report as a question for probably a future meeting, but a long time ago, before all of this happened to us, we had an ongoing discussion about forming a three-town agency to build a potentially build a treatment plant jointly. And it sort of has slid out of sight over the last several months. I know from what I hear in the newspapers that Dennis and Yarmouth seem to be interested in moving ahead, and the question is, are we still participating with this, or have we gotten to a point where we've probably fallen off the train and they're going to move on without us, or?
No.
um,
Joe, I'll comment first, Joe.
Absolutely, I was just going to follow up whatever you say. Yep.
We in fact met as video conference call last Thursday, continue those discussions. Our emphasis at the moment has been on the clarifying the agreement language. Don specifically had some questions on that, some concerns. As of last Thursday, I think they've adopted his concerns, or at least changed the agreement. I need to work that through Don, be sure that's correct. Our plan that we've talked about, Joe, Don and I and Griffin, is to, first off, come back to this body with the agreement that at least we have, a couple of us have looked at the agreement, see where that is. And if we can get that through, then we'll start a full court press on just walking through all of the issues that people are trying to understand it. So we haven't given up on it. The main discussion has been one of timing, because, we first talked about doing something in May, that's off, September's off. And so our position has been our next annual meeting, next May, quite frankly, be the time we're looking for continuing this discussion.
Okay.
But we have a lot of legwork to do. I want to get the agreement, some discussion on that, work that through, and then come back to all the other items.
Okay.
It's still in play, but we have a lot of work to do, see where we go with it.
Let's,
Joe?
And Mr. Chairman, my only update in that regard is I received a call Thursday night from my counterpart in Yarmouth, Dan Knappich, and he just conveyed similar sentiments that our counterpart in Dennis, Liz Sullivan, and I have, and that the three of us obviously are focused on pandemic and budgets and everything else. So Dan confirmed that Yarmouth is very much looking to really pick this up again for the 2021 annual town meeting. But in the meantime, he was hoping to have discussions with me, Liz, himself, and Dave Young from CDM Smith to try and bridge the gap. And I said I was in agreement with that, but also wanted to run it by you and Ron as part of that subcommittee. So I think we're all in the same boat, looking for spring of 2021.
The other thing that Dan Pelletier and Griffin Ryder are working on are the whole capacity issue, how much we think what our needs are to meet our CWMP objectives, because we need more data on that, so you're getting that data. Michael?
Well, I'd ask that we agenda this at some point for a much broader discussion, because, we're $10 million short and 200 plus homes in East Harwich short. And it'd be nice to think that we're gonna get the taxpayers' money out of what we're supposed to send to Chatham, and kind of also some data on how much nitrogen's actually going to be removed out there. So this shouldn't be a standalone conversation on how we're gonna proceed in Dennis, Yarmouth, Harwich versus finishing up with Harwich and Chatham and the total cost to the taxpayers. So sooner we can agenda that.
Michael, if I misstated that, I didn't mean to.
Nope, you
It's
didn't.
the overall discussion we're looking at.
Great.
Because we're at the same time, because of we had a meeting, I forget, Joe, were you in our last Pleasant Bay Alliance meeting?
I was not, no. Carol Ridley's meeting?
The Carol Ridley's meeting, Michael, to that, we're also re-examining those flow rates and stuff and what
Thank you.
goes on there. So all that is, it's gotta be the entire package. So
Thank you.
I didn't want to just move the other one-sided discussion. Okay? Ed, to that long-winded answer.
Yeah,
It's in play, but we have a lot of work to
yeah,
do.
You know, I've had a lot of questions about that by not so many folks here in town, but in neighboring towns, wondering where we were. Quite honestly, because we hadn't had the discussion in so long, I couldn't actually tell them where we were.
And-
That was a good update. I guess the other thing that for folks in town, which I can no longer tell them where we are, is what the progress and the, you know, sort of week out, 2 weeks out, 3 weeks out of the plan of the sewer installation in East Harwich. We used to have that every week as a report, and I don't know where to,
I
at
think
this
that's
point.
posted on the website.
It is posted weekly on the website.
And I can tell
Can
for a
certainly add
fact
it to the
that they're
agenda.
working on my
Yeah.
neighborhood right now.
Yep.
I just want to make up one follow comment on the DHY and the general discussion, is that Joel and Griffin and Dan first started looking at the flow rates and the capacity issues, and I would say that the other towns are now re-examining their whole plans as well, so it's been a fruitful discussion. Okay. Michael?
I'm good.
Steve?
I'm good, thanks.
And I'm good, so I'll entertain a motion
Yep, I make a motion that we adjourn.
to go back to open the executive session.
Right, so first,
So
is
we-
Don still on the call?
I'm going to give him a call right now.
Okay. So you just want to make sure that you're moving, you're not adjourning the
We're
meeting?
not adjourning, we're moving
Going to
back to
executive
executive
session, and I
session.
would imagine
Reconvening.
you would come out only to go into adjournment.
Right.
So I move that we adjourn open session and return to executive session, and that we will not be returning to open session.
Is there a second?
Second.
I'll take a roll call. Michael?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Ed?
Aye.
And I'm an aye.